Welcome to a special edition of the ES DraftCast. Tim Wood, Tony Pauline here. We are talking about players that were undervalued in the draft and that have overproduced in the NFL compared to their draft value. Tony, how are you, sir?
Busy as can be on this very cold day in New York City.
Oh, it is.
It's supposed to get even colder. And, as we talked about in the last podcast, flying to Frisco, Texas for 3 days of Shrine Bowl practice. And it's supposed to be 25 degrees with 10 inches of snow in Frisco on Saturday. So
oh, my.
Thankfully, they practice indoors at the Ford Center. So should be okay.
Not quite what you were expecting from Frisco, Texas, though.
It can be chilly there, but 10
yeah.
inches of snow? No, was not expecting that.
You remember the snow Super Bowl when they were in Dallas, right? Yeah. Everybody was angry about that.
Ice falling off the ceiling and things like that. 10,000 more people in the stadium that should have been there. Yes. Yeah.
Good times. So when we talk about the undervalue, we're talking about some specific players today, but from your experience, what happens when we undervalue a guy? Is it just that are they listening to the grades basically, and then they end up working on the skills, or are we missing stuff in the evaluation?
I don't know that anybody's missing about the evaluation, but what you'll find out is it's good coaching. And usually the undervalued guys are good athletes who weren't super high performers on the college level. But, the one theme that runs through it all is they all got hooked up with franchises who know how to develop players, who know how to coach players. I mean, you saw it last night in a national championship game with Indiana, who was undermanned compared to that Miami team, but they have a phenomenal coach. And that's what happens oftentimes. With the quarterback position, it's a little bit different. It's not the physical skills as much as it is the intellect, the football intellect. But it all comes down to coaching and development. That's why, you see the same teams competing in the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl, and you often see the same teams at the top of the draft.
They know how to take them to the next level.
That's why these coaches, the Shanahans, John Schneider, the general manager in Seattle, that's why they have great longevity.
So let's talk about these specific players that we want to zone in on. We're going to talk a little bit about your grades and what you saw, and then go into how they overperformed, what they improved on. Let's start with George Kittle.
Yeah.
49ers, tight end. Talk a little bit about what you saw of him coming into the draft.
An athlete who had to become a football player. I mean, you look at his production at Iowa. I think he caught 42 passes the past 2 seasons he was at Iowa. So he was a guy who had the physical skills, but had to become a football player. I had him as a 5th-round pick in my 2017 draft guide. He ended up going in the 5th round. And basically, it's a good system fit, and it's transitioning that athleticism that you saw all these years in Iowa into football ability.
Absolutely. What, to you, did he improve the most in his game?
His blocking and basically catching the football. I mean, that's basically it. I mean, like I said, he was never a big part of the offense with the Iowa Hawkeyes. And then he goes to San Francisco, and little by little, he develops as a pass catcher, as a blocker. You always knew he had the athleticism. He could always run, and run very well. Getting a little bit long in the tooth now. Now he's dealing with some injuries, but he developed into a football player. That's what happened.
Once you start seeing him learning, like running the route trees like a wide receiver, I mean, that's where we start talking about him looking like these tight ends that look more like wide receivers.
If you remember, and that really happened with Jimmy Graham all those years ago in New Orleans. I mean, he was basically a big tight end who played the position like a receiver. And the league sort of moved towards that, and you read my reports, it's basically plays the position like a receiver. There aren't too anymore. There are few, tight ends that can block and catch the pass. Brock Bowers, for example. I mean, that's the way it's been trending for 15 years now. Those guys, the tight ends who can block as well as catch the ball, but are short and intermediate range passers, are usually your day 3 picks, your 6th, 7th round picks, because they're number 2 tight ends at the next level. They're not game breakers. They're valuable, and you need them, especially in short yard situations or goal line situations, but they're not as highly coveted as the game breakers.
So the obvious question that comes to me from the fan perspective is, if this is happening now, why didn't it happen 25 years ago? Why weren't the tight ends always more like this?
It wasn't a passing league. I mean, you had guys like Ron Dane taken at the top of the draft, big, powerful downhill ball carriers that everybody loved, and that was the game then. It was the running game set up the pass, and you passed, when necessary or as a luxury, as opposed to the passing game being the primary focus now, which makes sense because it's the easiest way to get the ball down the field.
Absolutely. Speaking of getting the ball down the field, let's talk about Kittle's teammate, Brock Purdy.
Right.
Mr. Irrelevant.
Yes.
Not so irrelevant anymore.
No. And of course, the irony was the year before that, San Francisco traded all that draft capital to move up to the 3rd spot to get Trey Lance, who's been an absolute bust. I think he started 3 games on the NFL level.
Yeah.
But I think Purdy's one of those guys who gets it between the ears. Shanahan had Jimmy Garoppolo, and he struggled with Garoppolo because Garoppolo could not read his defense. He could not mentally absorb his offense, could not mentally absorb his offense. Trey Lance was never able to do it. Trey Lance had the great physical skills, and here comes Brock Purdy. I remember Brock Purdy that year. He was drafted, it was at Shrine Bowl practices, and he didn't look anything great. I mean, it wasn't like a guy, Garoppolo several years earlier was fantastic at the Shrine Bowl and moved into the 2nd round. With Brock Purdy, you came out of it thinking, okay, he's a nice backup quarterback. He's going to be a number 2 guy. He's a short-range passer. He's not going to wow anybody. But he got hooked up with the right coach who demands that his quarterbacks read the fences and basically demands that his quarterbacks know what's going to happen before it happens, and it was a perfect match.
How does the rest of the league, now we talk about the perfect coach there,
right?
But there's 32 of them. How does the rest of the league miss on that?
Well, because again, it goes back to coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the New York Jets and you have the Cleveland Browns who, can't get out of their own way when it comes to the quarterback spot, right? I mean, the San Francisco 49ers have success with Brock Purdy, and the New York Jets miss on Sam Darnold, who's going to be playing in the AFC title game this week, miss on, with the Seattle Seahawks, who know how to develop players. They miss on Zach Wilson. They bring in Aaron Rodgers. They do that. So that's how. That's why. And again, it all goes back to culture. It's no coincidence that whether it's the Philadelphia Eagles, whether it's Andy Reid, whether it's Kyle Shanahan or even his dad, there are certain people who just seem to be able to mine gold at the quarterback position while other organizations can never get it right.
Hard has got to be the hardest thing, the intangibles for you as a draft evaluator to actually put numbers to put grades to, right? I mean, he's showed heart in college, but now you go next level.
Right.
You can't ever truly measure that.
Yes and no. I mean, you have to watch him on film over the course of time, not just 1 year, not just this last year, not just a couple games. But if you see a guy who's, slacking constantly, that's a big red flag. Again, I hate to go back. You watch the national championship game last night. Mikhail Kamara, the defensive end from Indiana. I mean, he's a guy who's 6'1", 265 pounds. He's probably going to run the 40 and 4.7. Yet all this guy's done for the past 2 years at Indiana is make play after play after play, impact the game, as he did last night, not just as a pass rusher, but blocking a punt. So you kind of see when a guy is mailing it in consistently. C.J. Spiller was a guy at Clemson. He never lived up to NFL expectations. He was a guy who, whenever I watched him at Clemson, he would finish plays by running out of bounds.
Absolutely.
And I said, this is a red flag. So I think you can. What you can't really measure, heart is one thing. What you can't really measure is the mental acumen of a player. How is he going to be? Is he going to be able to fit into a system? Is he going to be able to absorb the system, whether it be offensively or defensively? That's an intangible that is very tough to measure.
A teammate of or a schoolmate of Spiller, Travis Etienne, was another one of those guys where it was like when you watched him in college, it was like, all right, this guy wants to hit people.
Yep.
It's just, is his size going to hold up in the league?
Right. I mean, didn't go down easily, would work his runs on the inside, very creative, and, that's transferred over well into the NFL, and now the Jacksonville Jaguars have a decision to make with him.
Absolutely. In terms of Purdy, how much does it go into the old adage of putting in the work? You've got the coach in the right spot, but just measuring how much work this guy's going to put in. He's clearly a guy like him, a guy like Brady, clearly put in the work above what we might have even thought that they had in him.
I mean, it's all important at the quarterback position. Now, what happens is during the scouting process, area scouts and eventually head coaches will talk to the coaches, that player's college coach, the assistant coach. You'll even talk to the people in the training room. Is this guy the first one in, the last one out? Or is he the last one in, first one out? And that's how they try and gauge that.
It's amazing how much that holds up, right? That like the first one in, last one out. Yeah. That sort of mentality is hard to evolve. You don't see players evolving that much, right? Going from the last one in to the first one in, for instance.
I mean, and it's a lot of times that happens because players are so much more physically gifted than everybody else. They're so much more athletically better than everyone else, and things come easy to them. And then what happens is once you get to the upper college level, especially NFL, well, the guy you're playing against is as physically gifted, is the same athlete as you, and it's much more than being able to run really fast or jump really high.
Absolutely. It's it all equals out. Every level up, it's the talent equals out. Then it becomes more about the work, right?
Absolutely.
Let's shift to the Steelers. One current, one past. Let's talk about DK Metcalf first. Yeah. What did you see? Now, Steelers now, Seahawks is where he made his bag, so to speak. But what did you see of him coming out of the draft?
I saw a guy who was great in a straight line. Obviously, he looked like a power forward on the football field. Caught the ball relatively well. But I saw someone who needed to expand his route tree, really improve his balance, playing balance. I think what really wowed people was that combine when he ran in the 4.3s.
Yeah.
And no one expected him to be that fast. And you knew that you had this great athlete who caught the ball relatively well on the college level, but you had to complete his game at the receiver position, which is why he went day 2 rather than being a mid-first round choice. Everybody says, well, yeah, he should have been a top 10 pick in hindsight, but in hindsight, you didn't know that he was going to develop into the player he was, and he was not a complete receiver coming into the NFL.
What's the biggest thing to you that he's evolved beyond the draft evaluation?
Well, I mean, the ability to be the dominant game controlling receiver that he's turned into be. I mean, and that's part and parcel to, it's not just the physical skills, it's also a mindset that when the ball's up there, I'm going to go and get it. And that has, started in Seattle and made him a marketable commodity.
I can't imagine a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now, he had obviously skills out the wazoo coming out, but you can't measure how he's going to step from the number 2 guy into the number 1 spot, like he stepped in, for instance.
Well, he was a different receiver. I was at Smith-Njigba's pro day that year. It was Smith-Njigba. Marvin Harrison was still a sophomore. So also C.J. Stroud that was the year C.J. Stroud was in the draft. And Smith-Njigba wasn't a big guy. He wasn't super fast. He ran the 40 once that day, and he ran it in the high 4.4s after not running at the combine. but he was an amazing route runner. I mean, the guy could turn on a dime without losing momentum. I've never seen anything like it. And it was he would multi-cut in the routes. It was absolutely amazing just watching this guy on the field, the way he would turn left and turn right without losing any momentum. You knew what you were getting. You weren't getting a vertical receiver. Maybe he could develop into that, but he didn't need to be a vertical receiver because his route running was so extraordinary. He would separate from defenders, and he caught the ball exceptionally well. And he didn't really play that much his last year, if you remember, at Ohio State, because he was injured early in the season, and they just mailed it in, if you would. Why am I going to play, get hurt, and basically, maybe hurt my draft stock?
Is there one guy? Nobody likes to admit they're wrong, and it's even with these guys that may have been undervalued but overperformed. It's not a matter of getting it wrong, right? But I mean, is there any one guy that you can point to through the years that the evaluators across the board probably just miss some things on?
I'm sure there's a bunch of them if I think back of it. I mean, I got to go way back. Randy Thomas, the offensive lineman from Mississippi State. The Jets took him in the second round of the 98 draft. And I mean, this was a guy that if he was in the draft today, he would be a first-round pick because of his mobility, his ability to pull across the line of scrimmage and block in motion. But those weren't highly valued attributes at the time. They just wanted a guy that was going to knock somebody off the line and bury him.
Let's go back a little bit, a little controversial as it turned out, but Antonio Brown, what did you see of him in the draft process?
Yeah, I mean, I loved him. If you look at my scouting report, it says Brown has been one of my favorite receivers in college the past 3 years. He lacked size, but he was fast, and all he did was he was basically the game-controlling receiver on the college level that DK Metcalf has turned out to be on the pro level. And I had him as a fifth-round choice. I don't remember exactly where he was selected, but everything was there. The thing with Brown is coming out of Central Michigan, he didn't play in a big-time conference. He wasn't in the Big Ten. He wasn't in the SEC. And, there was no Quinton Mitchell's in the MAC conference covering Antonio Brown's back then. So you wondered how he would react to the step up in competition. He was always a terrific receiver. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Were there any signs during the draft process of any of these extracurriculars that have played out?
Not that I know of at the time. Now, it's a little easier to get that information. The player from the Dallas Cowboys who committed suicide.
Yes.
I forget his name, from Western Michigan, another MAC team. I mean, I knew about that situation when he was drafted. Randy Gregory, I knew about the situation months before he was drafted. And when people were telling me, were saying it could be a top 10 pick, I was like, this guy's lucky if he goes in the second round because of the situation. Did not hear anything like that about Antonio Brown.
Yeah. It's sometimes that stuff might develop in the hits that he takes, and so it's
or it could be in the family genes. It could be a lot of different things.
Absolutely. When did you see the Hall of Fame level talent or the potential with Brown that he turned into in his prime?
Yeah, no. I mean, he played in the MAC, like I said. So it wasn't. He was good, and it was easy to dominate that sort of level of competition, in college because the MAC was, not a Power 5 or whatever it was at the time. So no, I don't think that anybody could realistically tell you that they did.
Yeah, it's when you look at the talent that developed. He's like one of those. I look at him as like a Darryl Strawberry of the NFL in terms of just, my goodness, the talent that was there in the prime of what that could have been in terms of Hall of Fame potential and what I look at what he could have done for the Buccaneers, what he could have done for the Patriots if it could have just kept it together.
I was at that game against the Jets where he stripped off his uniform and ran off the field. It was sad.
Yeah.
It was sad.
Absolutely. let's turn back to current days. Let's talk about Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
He is. We throw around that term generational talent too much in today's sports world, but boy, does he show some incredible skills. I
love Nacua at BYU. I absolutely loved him. I had him initially as a third-round pick. I still am very, very good friends with his agent. I've been friends with his agents for about 25 years. And I remember speaking with his agent before the draft. I was like, this guy's a third-round pick. And the agent said to me, he goes, no, I think he's going to be fifth round. I'm like, why? He goes, well, he didn't test that well. He doesn't run really fast. He doesn't jump really high. I said, but the guy's a great receiver. He goes, you're right, but he's going to get downgraded because of his testing numbers. And sure enough, he was. I had him as a third rounder. After speaking with his agent, who was looking at him, things like that, downgraded him to a fifth rounder. And I remember texting his agent in the middle of his rookie year. I'm like, wow. I'm like, this is great. You know, they should have listened to me. And he said, well, let's just hope he keeps it up, which he has. I mean, he's fluid and he's natural in every way possible. He's not going to beat anybody in a foot race. But when the ball's thrown to him, you know, there's a 90% chance he's going to come away with it.
It just seems like he continues to adjust to he continues to evolve and evade in turn and outperform any tape that anybody might be trying to lock him into.
Well, when you have a guy like Matthew Stafford throwing you the football and you have a coach like John McVay, who everybody loves, you know, overseeing everything, it makes life,
that helps.
You know, a lot easier. And now he's got Devontae Adams there, on the other side of him. So, you know, he had Cooper Kupp. I mean, it all factors in, you know, yeah, he's the number one guy, but they've got some other weapons to throw the ball to that the secondary and the safeties have to keep an eye on, and they just can't key on the core. Whatever it is, I am not surprised. I wish I had stood on my third round grade. But you know the way it is now. I mean, no one cares about the draft 2 or 3 years later. We're talking about it here.
Yeah.
But people, you know, give grades once the draft is over. This guy had the most first rounders. This guy had the most players in his top 100. You know, 2-3 years down the road, be damned. Then again, that's the way the league is going because they're so quick to cut the cord on some of these early picks.
This is what I care about more quite honestly.
It should, right.
You know, it's because this is, to me, you know, we talk about the rich keep getting richer, right? I mean, this is a case where the rich just got richer because they scouted correctly.
Right.
Like how does the rest of the league miss on a Nacua?
Well, because you know it's also a system fit. If you brought Nacua in, you know he's not a vertical receiver. You're not going to have him run a lot of go routes. You're going to have him run a lot of intermediary stuff and put him in positions where to catch the ball. You know, it comes down to coaching and system fits and things like that.
When you figure like comps, do you ever do that?
Never.
Yeah, I mean, because it became a thing for a while, right?
It still is. A lot of people do it. You know, listen, Nacua is Nacua. That's who he is. Yeah. I don't like doing comps. I never have. It's a lot of work, and to be honest with you, you know. I watched Nacua his rookie year, but I don't really watch him that much into his NFL career because I'm watching the next batch. I'm concentrating on the next batch of guys, you know, to evaluate them, to get scouting reports, to grade them, as we've got, you know, almost 600 players graded at the Essentially Sports draft board.
Absolutely. I don't understand it. Every player's an individual.
Yeah, exactly.
And yes, you can measure gradable skills, right? But you can't measure the intent. You can't comp intangibles.
No, or system fits or things like that. I mean, Nacua in a different, you know, comparing to a player that played in a completely different system doesn't work out. Even
when we talk about, we talk about the have-nots like the Jets and the Browns, but even a Nacua, let's just say, you know, in a Vikings system,
right,
is not going to be the same fit.
No, he'd be good, but he's not going to be the same fit. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's go to the offensive line.
Yeah.
Jason Kelce. Obviously, he's become a Hall of Fame level player. Did you see signs of that in the draft of Al?
Very athletic, very explosive. The problem with him was he was like under 290 pounds. So he wasn't a real big guy. So with Kelce, it was a situation where I had him graded as a 4th, 5th round pick. I think he went in the 7th round. I had him drafted as a sort of a wait and see guy. He was going to have to get bigger. He was going to have to get into a weight training program. University of Cincinnati, they didn't have a big weight training program at the time. Did I think he was going to become the player he did? No, I don't think few did. But the fact is this, we talk about system fits. Philadelphia Eagles, Howie Roseman, he's always put a premium on offensive linemen, whether it be Lane Johnson, the kid from Nebraska, Jordan. It takes Landon Dickerson out of Alabama. The guy's had, 5 knee surgeries or something like that? He's been a terrific player. So when the Eagles drafted him, and they've done a great job selecting offensive linemen, you knew something was there. That I think he was going to blossom into the Hall of Fame type of player he is? No. But you knew he had the ability to be a real good interior offensive lineman in the NFL. Whether it was guard or center, you had to wait and see.
How much does it depend when you're talking about centers? How much does the relationship with the quarterback factor into how the center develops?
Probably not that much. I think the leadership skills and the vision, because the center is the quarterback of the offensive line. He's the guy who's making the calls. He's the guy that's seeing, pick up the blitz. We're going to twist and stunt. Check this out. So, if you know how to do the shock, if you're a good shotgun snapper, you're a good shotgun snapper, whether Brock Purdy's behind center or Tony Pauline's behind center. You're going to get the ball back to him. What happens from that point on, is night and day. You want to have that relationship, but I think the field vision and the ability to basically quarterback the offensive line is more important.
Is there one thing that he evolved in his game that you, in terms of draft to what he became in the league, that truly stuck out to you?
Bigger and really his pass protection was outstanding. He was a really good run blocker in college, but I thought his pass protection skills really improved, which they had to, because the Eagles, whether it be under Andy Reid or Doug Peterson, or had good quarterbacks, Donovan McNabb, and then they drafted Carson Wentz. So I think his pass protection skills really took off.
It's crazy to see how these guys develop into brands too. That's
some of them anyway.
Kelce amazes me in and of itself. The Kelce brothers, of course, but Travis Kelce. Okay, he's a tight end, right. a wide receiver at the tight end position. But Jason becoming the star, right. Almost a bigger star, a bigger branding force now. Do you get asked to look at that stuff from as the game's evolved, as the marketing has become more important, the full commodity of the player? Do you get asked as a draft evaluator to look at marketability?
Not at all. All I'm worried about is what happens on the field. We talked about Joe Flacco in our last podcast. And Joe Flacco has been around for a while. He's won a Super Bowl, winning quarterback. You never see him on any commercials or anything, but that's him. That's his personality.
Yeah.
So it's more the personality of the player. Am I asked that? Absolutely not. It has no bearing. Now, leadership skills and things like that could transition over to that sort of off-camera personality.
And the personable aspect
right.
of the guy, right?
Right. But as far as evaluating a player based on if he looks good in a commercial or if he's a good public speaker, not at all.
Do we sometimes miss on a guy like, for instance, a guy like Jalen Hurts because he isn't as marketable, and you almost downgrade him on the personality side in terms of being a leader in the locker room?
Well, that's a loaded question or open-ended question. What's the future of Jalen Hurts with the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts does a great job when Saquon Barkley's on his game or A.J. Brown's out there, The answer is Jalen Hurts was interesting because he was okay at Alabama. Then he struggled. He lost his starting job. He went to Oklahoma in a wide open system where, he was able to freelance. And he was phenomenal his senior year. Then he went to the Senior Bowl where he was asked to play in an NFL system under center, things like that. And he stunk. He was terrible.
Yeah.
And his draft stock dropped. You went from I remember somebody who was going to meet him calling me saying, I'm going to meet Jalen Hurts in 50 minutes. Give me the skinny on him. And I told him everything I knew about Jalen Hurts. And then everything I'd said about Jalen Hurts turned out to be a dud that year at the Senior Bowl, which is why he dropped into the bottom part of round 2, where the Eagles swiped him up when they had Carson Wentz on the roster. So, I mean, leadership is important. It's especially important at the quarterback position. I mean, you go back to Brock Purdy, but it's all system and coaching and things like that. But with, Jalen Hurts, who knows? You could be looking at the exception of the rule there, depending on what happens in the next couple of seasons.
Yeah. Are there guys that you want to almost take credit for in terms of that you gave advice that probably saved some scouts in the building in terms saved some more room slots?
Yes, I'll never get credit for it, and there are a couple I'd have to think about that in depth. But I mean, listen, it's all an opinion game, right? So they may not say they use my opinion. I've had some back and forth with the guys in the past, both scouts as well as agents. But they're always asking the opinion, my opinion. Well, a lot of them.
But I mean, it's also relationships too. Like you've lasted in this business because you're not afraid to give your opinions, right, and you've been right more than not. So those relationships develop then as a trusted. You're a trusted evaluator.
I appreciate that, and it's not opinions the month before the draft either. Yeah. For me, it's opinions the summer before, or sometimes 1 or 2 years before. I talked to people, Genesis Smith, coming into the season, a safety from Arizona, who a lot of people love, thinks he's going to be a day 2 pick. I'm like, watch this guy. So everybody has the draft, the way the draft has transitioned over the years, and I've been in the business since 1997, is it went from, sort of a cottage, sort of cult-like sort of type of thing where when the draft was held, it's actually up there. It was held right here at Madison Square Garden for a while. Before that, it was the Marriott Marquis where there was maybe 500 people there. Now, you have major stadiums. But what happens is once the Super Bowl's over, all these guys who are following the season and the Super Bowl become draft experts. I think the value that people see in me is, once the 2026 draft is over, they can start talking to me about players for 2027 in May and June and July rather than, February and March.
Well, and there's a lot of noise out there now too, right?
Of course.
I mean, there's everybody thinks they're a draft expert now.
It's like everybody thinks they're a stock picker, but it's easy to be a draft expert. You watch 5 minutes of film on YouTube, and it can get out of control. With not only with the draft, but with free agency. The Jets are in the market for Kyler. The Jets are, well, who says that? Does anyone talk to Darren Mogi or Aaron Glenn to know the Jets are in the market for Kyler Murray? I mean, but that's the way it is today.
Every time we talk, it seems you either just were looking at film or you're off to look at film.
Yes.
Put a number on it. In an average year, how many hours of film?
I can't do it that way. I'll tell you this: it's 4 to 8 games a day. Like yesterday, I watched 7 games. I got through the Michigan film. I got through Michigan State because they don't only have a few prospects, and I got halfway through the Minnesota game. So I probably watched 2 Michigan films in the morning, 3 Michigan State films, and then another 2 Minnesota films at night. And the only reason I didn't watch a third one was because I was like, I got to watch the national championship game. So it's the best way to say it is it's 4 to 6 games a day, 11 months a year.
And when you're watching the games, what are you looking for in the players? Are you looking for trends? Are you looking for repeatable skills?
Right. Everything. You're looking for trends. Offensive lineman, does he bend his knees? Does he block with leverage? Does he get his hands up? Does the offensive lineman, is he able to move, or is he a small area blocker? If he's late with his hands, does he improve on that? Does he learn to bend his knees and block with leverage, or is he a straight-up arm wrestler? And you watch that over the course of time. I mean, it's a good question, and that's what I pride myself on, is because I have notes on these guys sometimes for 2 or 3 years, and I can see how they progress or they don't. And I'm one that I expect progress. I expect these guys to improve on their games. If they don't, I demote them, if you will.
Well, it's going back to what you said earlier in terms of either just resting on your talent, right? Or actually then putting in the work to stay elevated above the next level.
And now with the transfer portal and NILs, it's going to make it even more difficult, because they're going to go after the great player, the great athlete, to get the instant results, as opposed to, I guess I could tell the story now. Diego Pounds is the left tackle for Mississippi. He was Drake May's left tackle, May's final year at North Carolina, and he was terrific. He was a terrific left tackle. I had a high grade on him. He went to transfer to Mississippi, and I spoke to somebody that knew him, and Pounds was concerned because he said the coaching that he got at North Carolina on the MAC round was significantly better than the coaching he was getting at Mississippi. And his game is leveled off, if not regressed. And he went from a guy who maybe could have been a day 2 pick. He's going to go in the late rounds now. I think we're going to see him at the Shrine Bowl. But his game never progressed. And according to him, it was because he didn't receive the same coaching at Mississippi they received at North Carolina. Now he was playing a lot more bowl games. He never would have gotten to the college football playoffs at North Carolina. Yeah. But that the transfer portal and guys moving around, especially now you got guys moving around to 3 schools or so, sometimes that's going to make that progress a little more difficult.
Does it help you even more now, in a way, in terms of getting to see them in a number of different systems?
It should. I mean, it's something that you got to take into consideration. But when a player doesn't do well in the past, the conversation will be, well, he had 3 coordinators in 4 years. I remember talking to somebody about Fernando Mendoza before the season started, and I said, I love Mendoza's physical skills, but he's a little bit inconsistent. And it was, well, he's had so many coordinators the past couple of years, he was never able to settle into a situation. And that's very important. It's important to the player. That's important, for the player's development. And he goes to Indiana, who's got an incredible coach. Curt Cignetti, as far as I'm concerned, is the best coach in football, college or pro. And you see what happens. Wrote an article in the newsletter at Essentially Sports. I expanded on my piece that Dante Moore's part of the decision of Dante Moore was the fact that his landing spot, and he was concerned about the landing spot. And people took that as Dante Moore didn't want to play for the Jets. And that was never told to me. I was never told that. I never said that.
We went back and forth on headlines where I was going to put Jets in a headline. And you're like, no, I was never specifically told
Exactly. But reading the tea leaves and talking to people, it was a situation where Dante Moore didn't want to go to a situation like the New York Jets, where the coach and the head and the front office who selected him in the 2026 draft may not be there in 2027. And that's a real possibility for the New York Jets. And players don't want to they want to shy away from that because new systems, new personalities, things like that. And it wasn't so much, I wasn't getting the vibe that it was the New York Jets. I was like, it was the Cleveland Browns where, although they're looking for a new head coach, or some other team that had the second pick where it may be a brand new situation in 2027, it was in the stay in school column.
Yeah. And like you said, the guys that may not be, I look at a guy like Trevor Lawrence that has been through so many coordinators, so many systems. So now to see him even, I'm of the school, to see him even evolving his game at this point, given like just the exhaustion that he must have just going through all those coordinators.
Yeah. And a guy who I think has been a disappointment to many of us because we thought he was going to be the generational talent at the quarterback position.
Absolutely.
He was probably one of my highest rated quarterbacks since Peyton Manning back in 1997. He's finally starting to live up to it. But to your point, and you thought when Doug Peterson was there, maybe they turned the corner.
Yeah.
He's finally starting to live up to it with Liam Cohen, which is wonderful to see. But again, go back to what I said at the top of the show. Talent, being able to run fast and jump high, you have to have a coach on the NFL level that can develop that talent.
Comes down to weapons too. I look at a guy like Lawrence and I look at a very tangible difference from the first half of the season to the second half, past the trade deadline.
Myers,
I thought Jacoby Myers was probably the underdog pick, the underdog move of the whole trade deadline because it gave him reliability. It gave him trust, the instant trust in a guy like that.
That's why they signed him to a 3-year extension. So now they're set at receiver. And if you remember, there was talk, or rumors, I should say, that they were going to trade Brian Thomas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before the deadline. And they said, we're going to do that. We're going to bring in Jacoby Myers. They don't have very high draft, they don't have a lot of draft picks because of the whole Travis Hunter deal. And now Jacoby Myers, but it doesn't matter.
It's amazing to see how little tweaks like that, right? And his game, Lawrence's game has always been the same, right? It's just having that one more escape valve in a system.
I think he's also making better decisions. I mean, he's protecting the football more.
Absolutely. It's crazy to see a guy like that, though. I guess when you look at a guy like Lawrence, and I don't put him in a Sam Darnold or a Geno Smith category, or a Baker Mayfield, but I mean, in a way, they're similar because it's taken so long for that ability to finally shine at the next level.
And fortunately for the Jaguars, they were smart enough to keep him. Unlike Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield or Geno Smith, who left via trade or being cut or whatever.
I said that earlier in the season in one of my articles. The fact that the Jaguars have stuck by him to see, and this was right around the Chiefs game, right? When it was like earlier in the season when they beat the Chiefs, and it was like, oh, wow, that's the breakout game. That's the breakout game. The fact that the Jaguars have stuck by him, I don't know if you call it smart or just dumb luck that they just decided not to make a move, but it's finally starting to pay dividends.
I think that's why they got the coach that they wanted.
Yeah. Because
he had the quarterback. We're here Tuesday in New York, and as we're doing the show, John Harbaugh is being introduced as the new head man with the New York Giants. Well, John Harbaugh's decision was probably made a lot easier by the fact that the Giants look like they have a dynamic young quarterback in Jackson Dart.
It's crazy.
The other thing, you mentioned, it's funny, you mentioned Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith. What do those three players have in common? They play for the Jets or play for the Cleveland Browns.
Yes, they did.
Or they were drafted by the Jets or the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah. Good coaching tree.
There you
go. Not so much. I'm Tim Wood. This is Tony Pauline. It is the ES DraftCast. We're doing a special edition here, taking a look at undervalued in the draft, overperforming in the league. How did that happen? What did we see? What have they become? Tony, before we get into a couple other players, you just mentioned Harbaugh. I've got to ask you, and it's off topic, but I've got to ask you now that I've got you here in person. McDermott gets let go, and is there any buyers? Is there any buyer's remorse? Do you think on Harbaugh's side now, or Stefanski that I could have had Josh Allen?
No, because I think that first of all, I had heard 2 years ago that there was a chance McDermott was going to get let go.
Absolutely.
If the Bills didn't make it through the Super Bowl. So I think that they probably knew that there was that possibility. as far as Harbaugh, he comes to New York City. His family, his family, the Harbaugh family and the Mara family have a lot in common. So I don't think he's like pounding his fist saying, "Oh man, I could have been coaching Josh Allen." The fact is, I mean, the window was closing very quickly on the Buffalo Bills, which is probably one of the reasons why they fired McDermott. So I don't think with Stefanski and the Bills need some help. In fact, one of the guys we're going to talk about is one of the reasons why they're going downhill, in my opinion. So no, I don't think so. I mean, Stefanski, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with Michael Penix in Atlanta's got a good defense there. But I think Harbaugh, especially, is very happy and going to be very happy in New York.
When you talk about,
and you have to remember, they also took the general manager Brandon Beane and they made him the president.
That's what it makes me think. Like you were saying, this is in the works for a while.
Right.
Like it almost feels like this was a fait accompli.
Right.
And okay, they got around further,
right,
but this was going to happen regardless, unless they won a Super Bowl and they just couldn't make the move.
And you think Harbaugh, even though the Giants kept Joe Schoen, Harbaugh is going to be the guy there. He's going to be able to do what he wants to do there. Where I think at Buffalo, whoever the head coach is may have to answer to Brandon Beane.
Sure. Now, you mentioned one of the guys we were going to talk about, Stefon Diggs.
Right.
That's who you're talking about in terms of just you feel like they made a bad move there that's kind of started the downfall.
How's their offense been since he's left?
Yeah.
I mean, he's the guy who took the top off the defense. They don't have that. They don't have consistent receivers anymore. And I mean, Diggs, he's smaller. He's a bit of a live wire, but he's a guy that, can break the long play and he catches the ball extremely well. So, and he was like that, coming out of Maryland into the NFL draft.
In terms, what were the biggest things that you saw from him coming out?
Well, the biggest negative was his size because he wasn't very big. Is he going to be a slot receiver? How is he going to handle the next level? You're going to have to line him up off the line of scrimmage. Is he going to be able to handle press coverage? Things like that. But just the sheer speed and the pass catching ability, you're like, wow. I mean, I'm looking at it here. I had him as a third, fourth round pick. I don't know exactly where he ended up. Was he going to be a sturdy receiver? But you were also looking at him as a receiver / potential return specialist.
When I'm a Patriots fan, and so when I looked at him coming to the Patriots, it's just another overperforming small guy. I look to the guys like Troy Brown,
Julian
Edelman. Amendola. Right. They live in that zone. So this was just going to be another one of those guys.
Which is so ironic because the Patriots, especially under Belichick, had so many swings and misses with first round receivers. I mean, it was a disaster.
Yeah.
They could get Julian Edelman, basically an option quarterback from Kent State, to become a great receiver, slot guy, return specialist. But who was the guy? Harry Neal?
Neal. Yeah.
Who was an absolute bust
that
they took in the first round.
And Thornton even. Oh, yeah. Thornton ends up going to the Chiefs. Look like gold this year.
Right.
Right. But I kept thinking, well, why couldn't we get that out of him? Sometimes these teams give up way too early on these guys.
Or sometimes teams just can't get it right at a certain position. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers looking for. I mean, they used a lot of early draft capital on cornerbacks, and they've struggled developing cornerbacks, and they're always looking at cornerback. The Minnesota Vikings are using a lot of early draft capital at the cornerback position. They've struggled at the position. They finally get a guy, free agency, Isaiah Rodgers, but they still need cornerbacks. So it's also the fact that some organizations just have it with some positions and don't have it with other positions.
A guy like Diggs, what has been the biggest thing you've seen from him that creates the longevity that he's now having in the league?
Well, I mean, that goes to a lot of off-the-field training, off-the-field conditioning, doing the right things, from January through July. So that is a big part of it.
Yeah, he's still the guy that puts in the work. Everybody looks at engaged or with Cardi B, so they're thinking, oh, he's Mr. Hollywood, but guy still puts in the work. It's crazy to see some of these guys.
I didn't know he was going out with her until not that I really care, but I didn't know he was really going out with her until I was I was pulling up some old scouting reports. Well, I was pulling up an old scouting report on him, and then I just Googled to see what round he was drafted.
A little bit of social media.
Yeah.
Seeing Cardi show up.
I saw something like that. I don't know.
She was
not a fan of hers, but that's another story.
Yeah, no, she was hardcore yelling at the haters after Sunday's game for sure.
I don't blame that. That's cool. She stands by her guy. Giselle Bundchen used to do that all the time.
Yeah?
I thought that was cool. I thought that was great.
Absolutely. In terms of not Diggs, but Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Right.
I won't say similar, but some of the same traits, right?
Yeah, I think the problem with St. Brown was he was better at the start of his college career than he was when he entered the draft. And when a guy comes off a bad year, you got to find out why. You got to make sure that's not going to continue, and you've got to be able to turn that around. So USC puts a lot of good receivers in. Recently, they've also had a lot of busts in the NFL draft, I should say. But a lot of talented receivers come out of that USC system, always has. And St. Brown, it was just a situation, was his best football behind him or is his best football in front of him?
In terms of, what is the biggest thing that you saw in terms of St. Brown, in terms of just the skills that stood out to you?
He's a natural pass catcher. Track the ball in the air. Eye-hand coordination, catching the pass away from his frame. At least that's what he was early in his USC career. The year before he entered the draft, he kind of came off of that. Like I said, I like to see progression receivers came off of that, which is what knocked him out of the first any consideration for the first round.
Is there a guy that you can remember that has almost taken the evaluations like verbatim coming out of a draft and just like picked away at the criticisms like one by one to really raise their game, to kind of just literally like a
Well, the guys we're talking about would be Nacua.
Yeah.
Because no one figured he was going to turn out to be what he's turned out to be.
Yeah. Because he's just it's almost like he went check by check on the negatives and just completely.
Well, I think the negatives were he's not really fast, he's not super athletic, and they kind of dismissed the fact that he's a great receiver.
Yeah. How does a guy is it a guy like St. Brown? Is it the system as much? In terms of just finding that right fit to accentuate the positives and minimize the negatives?
No, because he was a good receiver all along, and they've had a couple different quarterbacks and systems at Detroit. So I think it was more that he got back to where he was early in his USC career.
Yeah.
And built from that point on.
What, in terms of, is there a next level for a guy like St. Brown at this point in his career? Are there things that you're still not seeing that you want to see?
You want to say yes. The problem is he's beholden to that Detroit Lions offense, which has got an aging quarterback that's probably on the downside of his career, that has an offensive line that has a lot of problems, which is basically going to extend into what he does and doesn't do moving forward.
Kind of a bonus, let's say, Goff.
Yeah.
What did you see from him coming out and how he's evolved and even survived, right, to a certain extent, survived the Ram situation?
Came out of Cal. I thought he was nice. He wasn't a bigger guy. I thought he was a classically overrated quarterback when he was selected with the first pick of the draft. He was selected with the first pick of the draft because he was a quarterback. He wasn't, one of the top-rated players in that draft. And Carson Wentz went second that draft, I believe. That was when the Eagles traded up and got Carson Wentz. I mean, he stood the test of time. He's done a good job with a good coach in Detroit. They're at a turning point. They're at a crossroads. If they don't win next year, if they don't make a run, I could see the Lions moving on from Jared Goff.
Especially with the loaded draft class that's coming in 27, right?
Got to be careful about that. You got to be that loaded draft class in 2027.
Well, we thought it was coming in 26, right? Yeah.
Arch Mannings, Lenora Sellers, and so on and so on. I know I'm forgetting a few. Kate Klubniks, and a year ago, before the season before the 2025 draft, it was Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers and Jalen Milroe and Shedeur Sanders. You got to be careful about that's. I understand why people look at it that way, but you have to be careful.
Are there guys at the quarterback position specifically? Are there guys in the league right now that haven't gotten their shot per se, that you stand by the grade and you stand by, like, if this guy just gets the shot? You when you brought Quinn Ewers up, that did just kind of triggered that for me. There's so many of those type guys that are just waiting for a shot
at the quarterback position.
Well, yeah, right. Because now we're starting to get Phillip Rivers back in the league,
right? Exactly.
Drew
Quinn
Brees probably thought he could come back out for this for the AFC Championship game, given what's happened with Knicks.
I mean, Quinn Ewers is a good example. And when everyone was saying, lecturing or conversing about Shedeur Sanders' fall last year into the 5th round, I was like, well, what about Quinn Ewers' fall into the 7th round? Quinn Ewers had much more success on the college level. He was much more of a leader. He was a much better college quarterback. I mean, his arm wasn't that much worse than Shedeur Sanders. So I'm glad to see that Ewers got a shot and played reasonably well. We'll have to see what happens with the new head coach. To your point, though, I don't think so, because if that was the case, a guy who was a backup on whatever team would eventually – Mike White. You remember Mike White? Yeah. Western Kentucky. Had a few good games starting with the New York Jets, went to Miami, and then became what Mike White is, a number 2 or number 3 quarterback.
I saw a stat the other day that just blew my mind that this is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo's 7th championship game.
Wow.
7th championship game.
Do you remember that? There was about 15 years ago or so, there was that great Miller Lite commercial about the quarterback who played in every single Super Bowl. You remember that? He was He was eating a hot dog on the sideline. It was, that reminds me of that. He played in all these championship games. He's had an impact in none of them.
Yeah. I mean, it amazes me, though, a guy like Garoppolo, we see it now with a guy like, Mac Jones that had some great starts this year, a guy like Malik Willis. It amazes me how you mentioned how thin that we are at that position, that it almost just takes that 3-game window.
Right.
Garoppolo had that 3-game window with the Patriots that got him a huge contract.
Right. Well, Matt Castle. Remember Matt Castle?
Oh, yeah.
But the Patriots were known. Even Jacoby Brissett.
Sure.
I mean, they got more in return for Jacoby Brissett trading him than what they actually spent on him in the draft. But that's a completely different, completely different organization. But you mentioned Malik Willis. I mean, it's comical. People are, Malik Willis had a couple good games, and everybody wants him now. And Kenny Pickett, who was actually the only quarterback selected in the first round that year, is on his 4th team?
Yeah.
I think he's been on more teams than he's been in the league. The number of years he's been in the league.
And you think about Malik Willis, just how quickly we would have thrown him in the trash pile in Tennessee.
Right.
It's like, and on to the next.
Right.
And now it's like.
And the next was Will Levis, who didn't turn out.
Mr. Mayo.
Yeah, exactly.
Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah.
Isaiah Pacheco with the Chiefs. Maybe from a fantasy perspective, not living up to the potential that everybody wants to see him live up to. But what did you see from him coming out of the draft?
Well, played right down the road here at college in Rutgers. And then I remember watching him at the Shrine Bowl. And I'm not sure if he was the Shrine Bowl, the first Shrine Bowl post-COVID, the second one, but the Shrine Bowl practices those years were out in Vegas. And he was just an explosive, violent ball carrier, which is what he's shown to be in the NFL. I mean, he was a guy that would almost crave contact. Wasn't super fast, wasn't a breakaway threat, but a compact build, and he would get the ball, and he would just go north-south. We would go forward. Wasn't any east-west running unless the play called for it. Wasn't any running out of bounds. It was just a guy that just went forward. And he got into the right spot with the Chiefs, who could, at that point, could never get their running back situation correct. They drafted that kid from LSU, Edwards, whatever his name was.
Edwards-Helaire. Yeah.
Edwards-Helaire, right, who turned out to be a complete bust, So he got into the right situation with the Chiefs. And, now the Rutgers has another running back in Kyle Manegi, who's doing a great job, underdrafted guy, with the Bears.
Talk to me about Rutgers. Talk to me about these schools that seem to produce draft prospects.
Yeah, sometimes.
But I think about the McCourties. Like I wasn't even thinking of your guy from the Bears. I'm thinking, but it's like, how does a school like that and yet they can't put it together as a program?
Well, they don't put it together as a program because New Jersey has a lot of really good high school football. And for years, Wisconsin went in there and recruited, and Miami went in there and recruited. And
just cleared out the cupboard.
The reason they were never really able to put it together, except for a couple of years in Shiano's first tenure there, is everybody was raiding the school, and they were not able to keep their best talent in state.
Now, from a draft perspective, is there ever a situation where it's like, all right, if he's so good, why is he at Rutgers? If he's so good, like Antonio Brown, if he's so good, why is he in the MAC? Do those sort of things come back, or
you got to find out why?
Or is that shrinking now?
You got to find out why. I mean, Kyle Manegi, I remember interviewing him before the draft last year, and he got offers from Ivy League schools. He went to Rutgers. He got massive NIL offers after his junior year at Rutgers, but he said, I committed here. I'm staying here. So you ask the question, but there's usually a very good answer why the player is there. Again, go back to Mendoza. Mendoza wasn't a highly recruited player.
Yeah.
Ended up at Cal. I mean, he talks about it openly. He wanted to go to Miami. They rejected him as a walk-on tryout. So there's it's a legitimate question, but there's always a reasonable answer. There's usually, I should say, a reasonable answer to it.
How much does the PR of it come into play in terms of crafting those answers in the draft process? You mentioned it in our last episode, how much these interviews matter.
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of it will come from the college coaches themselves, interviewing with the NFL coaches. But yeah, you've got to be articulate about it, and you've got to be fluid about it, and you have to come across that you're not lying about it.
Yeah, and there almost has to be some humility about it too that the coaches want to see.
Sometimes, that they do, because they'll yell. They used to yell and scream. They used to ask some outrageous. Whenever I interviewed a guy who was at the Combine, I will always ask him, what's the craziest question that you were asked during those Combine interviews? And there's always something. It's not as bad as it used to be. But there's always some sort of crazy question. Yeah,
the crazy questions, it's gotten a little less in the social media because they were leaking out there, and it was looking bad for some of these teams.
Yeah, and the league clamped down on them. And again, that's we could have a discussion on this for an hour. I understand why a lot of those questions were asked.
Absolutely.
Those questions were relevant to potential situations moving forward in a player's career.
Yeah.
But
and sometimes in these draft interviews, you're almost trying to throw a player off his center, right? In terms of just like getting him off of his message to see how he handles a little adversity even in the interview process.
Yeah, sometimes they will. I mean, they'll do a lot of times when they bring the player in for an official 30 visit, they will do, board work with the guy, or they'll show him film, and, they'll see, does the guy remember this play? What was his responsibility? What were the guys around him supposed to be doing? We interviewed Isaiah Williams, who is now with the New York Jets, who had a great year as a return specialist. He was a slot receiver. They used him more at the end of the season as a slot receiver. Proved himself capable. He's going to be back on the team next year. I remember interviewing him with the New York Giants at the Shrine Bowl about route running, and he gave a sermon on route running. It was encyclopedic. It was unbelievable. Listen to this guy talk about route running.
On the level of like Cousins talking about his progressions in that press conference.
It was phenomenal. Now the guy didn't run very fast, which is why he got pushed out of the draft. But we're seeing him develop now.
In terms of the process itself, what is the craziest situation you've seen that's happened at the combine itself, in terms of whether it be a slide, whether it be just a situation of the guy just did not perform well?
There's going to be a couple of them, but when it comes to interviews, it's got to be Ja'Kai Polite. I mean, Ja'Kai Polite was a terrific pass rusher coming out of Florida. People thought potentially late first round. He went into the interviews and he froze, and they were like throwing things at him, and they were screaming at him. And then he complained about those interviews during the media. In the media, when they have the media time, he's up there at the podium complaining about it, whining about it. And
so you froze in the moment,
right?
And then now you're going to go throw your So now we just learned two things about you.
And, I remember asking the question. We talked about Randy Gregory before. I was like, "Is this a similar situation?" Like, no, we don't think so. He went from a first-round pick, potential late first-round pick, to a third-rounder, and he's had like no NFL career at all.
Yeah,
I remember Ezra Cleveland. I had dinner with Ezra Cleveland, who's an offensive lineman, after his workout before his getaway day. And he was telling me, I'm not going to mention the team, but he was telling me how one of the offensive line coaches from a team he interviewed with was screaming at him, "Your film is dog crap, blah, 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 blah." I was like, "What did you do?" He goes, "I started laughing." He goes, "I couldn't help it." He said, "I tried to stop laughing, but I was laughing at the guy." So
almost you want to see how they handle that sort of level of beratement.
Adonai Mitchell was a guy, great receiver as a freshman at Georgia, injured his second year, transferred to Texas, had a terrific junior campaign. People thought about him as a potential first-round pick. Just destroyed himself in the interviews. Just said some things both publicly and privately that he fell into the late part of round 2. The Colts drafted him. And I remember Chris Ballard screaming about how, people get on these kids. They're 20 years old. They're talking about the interview process. They don't know what they're talking about. Well, Chris Ballard, you got a first-round prospect in the late part of round 2 because of the fact that he screwed up in the interviews. And then Chris Ballard traded him to the New York Jets as part of the Ahmad Gardner trade.
Jeez. You mentioned that the quarterback stepping up to the whiteboard. It reminded me of the Gruden quarterback schools. Does something like that help you as an evaluator? Give you almost bonus, or is it almost a detriment to put that much out there because the teams are like, all right, now everybody's seeing too much of this guy?
Does it help me? No. I mean, it's just interesting to see the way the guys interact.
Yeah.
I'm not like knocking a guy up. As far as the teams, they're going to do their own work. They're not going to watch what John Gruden, when he was on ESPN, is putting out there. They're not going to react to what Tony Pauline is saying before the draft. They do their own work. They have their own scouting systems, the scouting departments, and the guys get paid a lot of money. So I think it's nice conversation for people to consume and talk about, as far as on social media and the old forums on webs, but it doesn't have a major impact. Well, I mean, if Ja'Kai Polite came back and had a John Gruden type interview and was phenomenal, it's not going to help what happened, the way he screwed up at the combine. Teams are going to remember that when he was in that room with them and what went on there.
For sure. Let's talk about two defensive guys to wrap up. One, a lot of talk around is he going to stay? Where's he going to go? Maxx Crosby.
I love Maxx Crosby, and I was very close to the Maxx Crosby situation, and I remembered very well. I had Maxx Crosby as a third rounder, and the situation with Maxx Crosby was he was at Eastern Michigan. He was a dominant player. I noticed him as a sophomore. I was like, got to watch this guy. Had a terrific junior year. And it was a situation with Maxx Crosby where, we talk about NIL deals now and players getting paid. He was in the MAC. He wasn't making much money. He was struggling finding money to buy food on the weekends because he could buy food during the week when the training table was open. But when it was closed on the weekend, he was struggling. And I remember I was talking with an agent who really liked him, was trying to sign him. I said, he's a third rounder. He's a really good player. The agent didn't sign him. The agent soured on him. He said, seventh rounder. I'm like, you're out of your mind. I was friends with the agents who did sign him, and they said the moment he got to combine training and started eating properly.
Consistent nutrition.
Right. His body just filled out. And he wasn't able to do that at Eastern Michigan. Now, he's had some personal issues, which he's gotten over, which is great to see, but he's been a terrific football player.
Oh, absolutely. And you almost we want to root for them just from a human level of overcoming those stories, but it makes the football journey even more impressive to be able to rise.
Well, the football journey with Maxx Crosby for me started when he was a sophomore at Eastern Michigan. Usually the MAC, I can get through that film relatively quickly. Now, quicker than ever. But early on, I remember watching him.
Why quicker than ever now?
They just don't have the prospects.
Yeah.
I mean, the MAC, the American Athletic Conference, they're just breeding grounds for the Power Four conferences.
Yeah.
So, I don't know that we'll ever see a Quinton Mitchell ever again come out of the MAC. A lot of people like the Toledo safety now, Emmanuel Smith-Warren. I don't know. I'm not as high on him as other people. But I mean, you could stay at a MAC school and sign a $500,000 deal, or you can go to a Big 12 school and sign a deal for 3 times that amount.
It's a crazy situation, though. Like the thought process is that with this NIL money, that it would almost help the MAC because all it takes is one donation or one powerhouse fundraiser, and now you've got a lot of NIL money to work with.
You ever watch MAC games? I mean, the stadiums are, if they're 50% full, that's a huge amount. So, I mean, what you're saying philosophically is correct, but I don't know that anybody's opening up their checkbooks like Phil Knight is at Oregon.
How, outside of Cignetti, they're a Power 5 school, obviously, but I mean, how does an Indiana situation happen that it evolves that quickly? Everybody's cynical. The thought process right now is, we're going to find out 3-4 years from now that they took all the shortcuts, cut corners, and because that's how everybody is. Everybody's cynical when we see success like this.
Well, the problem is, as you said, outside of Cignetti, and you can't separate the two.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't Cignetti, they're not the. You watched the guy last night. I mean, he's not even, doesn't seem even overjoyful about them winning. And what did they do? Well, they signed Josh Hoover, the TCU quarterback, during the transfer portal window. So he's already set up for next year. I mean, I think the best thing is when he won, he looked up and he went like this. He must have been talking to his father, who was a football coach. So you can't separate the two.
Yeah.
You can't. And as far as cutting corners, look, they have a quarterback that'll be the first selection of the draft. They may have 2 or 3 other players, the 2 receivers, Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper, the cornerback D'Angelo Pons that are going to be day 2 picks, maybe Aiden Fisher. I mean, that Miami team they played last night, the Oregon team they played 10 days ago, the Alabama team they played 2 weeks ago or January 1st.
Prospect after prospect.
Not only prospect, early round prospect, first round prospect.
Look at your big board, yeah.
So you can't separate it because if it was a different coach, I don't think Indiana. And remember, people say, "Oh, this is such terrible." They were in the college football playoffs last year. They were in the college football playoffs last year with a significantly less talented quarterback in Curtis Rourke, who elevated his game, did a great job, played half the season with a torn ACL, but he still made it to the college football players where no one would have thought that before the 2024 season.
Absolutely. Let's talk about one more guy.
Yeah.
TJ Watt.
Yeah.
Obviously has the pedigree.
Yep.
The family, the lineage. But what did you see out of him?
Well, he wasn't his brother because I love J.J. Watt. And I said so, and I brought the scouting report with me, and I said at the time J.J. Watt was going to be one of the best players to come out of the draft, and he was. T.J., similar, pass rusher. I think my concerns about T.J. was I like these guys that are rounded. I think people say, oh, he's an edge rusher. He's Avril Reese of Ohio State. People talking about his edge rusher. No, he's a terrific linebacker who can rush the passer. And my concerns with T.J. Watt was he's great making plays up the field. We got to see him in reverse now because you run those zone blitzes, and that guy's got to be able to drop back off the line of scrimmage, play in space, cover a tight end, cover a running back. You know, he had the game going forward. He didn't seem to have it going backwards.
That's the biggest thing you've seen him evolve.
Right. Sure.
Right? Is that
to round into a complete player? But then again, at Wisconsin, they didn't need him to make plays in reverse. That's the thing about, you learn, especially going to the Senior Bowl, an offensive lineman, he doesn't have he's not setting his feet properly. He's not using his hands properly. College coaches don't care about that. They just want their offensive tackle to be able to block the guy across from him. Doesn't matter whether he's doing it with his elbows, whether he's doing it with it. Doesn't matter. You get to the next level, you got to be able to do those things technically sound, or you're going to get your fanny beaten.
Yeah. He'd already gotten, a guy like TJ Watt had already gotten his fanny beaten enough within the family.
I would imagine, right?
How much does that come into the evaluation process?
Bloodlines are always important. Bloodlines are always a consideration, whether it's a Randy Gatson. I mean, I loved Randy Gatson. I said he was ridiculously underrated. The former receiver turned tight end out of Syracuse, who had a great season this year with the Los Angeles Chargers. It's no coincidence that he's really blossoming into a terrific pass catcher, considering his dad was an NFL receiver. So the bloodlines are always important because the son, the brother, whoever has a leg up on seeing what life in the NFL is like.
Yeah, it's not even the genetics, right? It is the
genetics.
Genetics, but living the life too.
Right, sure. And they see what goes into it, what has to happen, the sacrifices that have to be made. Marvin Harrison Jr. It's a bonus. It has to factor into it, just as long as the person who was older was not a complete schmuck.
Is there a bloodline bust that you can think of?
I can think of no, but I'm sure there is.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
We want to tell you the big board, Tony Pauline's big board, is on EssentiallySports.com. Some big updates coming. What's coming down the line in terms of you're leaving here? You're pretty much on the road for the next 2 weeks.
Bring my snow gear to Frisco. Boy,
yeah.
It's the 2-round mock draft will probably be out before this podcast. Keep an eye on that. Obviously, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Shrine Bowl practices. Not only what's happening on the field, what's being said in the stands at the Ford Center. Fly to Senior Bowl. That's always a lot of fun. I mean, Senior Bowl really, besides the 3 days of practice, it's also the unofficial beginning of free agency because a lot of agents will fly in just to talk with teams about potential free agents. You have to remember, I mean, the Shrine Bowl and especially the Senior Bowl is where players will have the most eyes on them at any one time. Because what happens is with the combine is when the defensive linemen practice, it's just defensive line coaches and a few head coaches and some scouts. But the defensive line coaches will be there at the Senior Bowl to watch the defensive linemen, watch the offensive linemen, watch the tight ends, the tight end. So the Senior Bowl, these players will have the greatest amount of eyes on them at any one point in time. And then when I get back, I've got about 110 scouting reports ready, or almost ready. My guy's proofreading my trash. So those will be uploaded eventually into the big board. So there'll be a lot of information there. I also brought. Time we got. Okay. I wanted to bring, this is the 2020 TFY draft guide. This is
2000?
2000, right. This is the way it used to be. This is before it was on. I believe this is right before I was with Scout. So yeah, this is the 2020 version. I've actually got notes here. It was the first Senior Bowl I went to with heights and weights. Why did I bring this? On page 6, 2/3 of the way down, giving a 3.45 grade is a guy by the name of Tom Brady from Michigan. Okay, now hang on a second. Here's my scouting report on Tom Brady. Tough, smart quarterback with great field awareness and leadership skills. Not quick dropping into the pocket, but sets his feet and steps into throws. Poised and patient. Buys as much time as possible in the pocket, surveys the field, and goes through receiver progressions. Sees the field and does not make bad decisions. Quick finding the open receiver and delivers the ball with a fluid over-the-top delivery. Gives his receivers a chance, puts air under deep throws, and puts passes out front, letting receivers run to the ball. Quickly delivers the ball for 3-step drop. Accurate throwing on the move, but does lose something on passes. Not mobile, elusive, and lacks great physical skills. We'll get to that in a second. Does not have a big league arm. Receivers tend to wait on the ball and timing patterns, and passes lack zip. A signal caller with great intangibles and someone who can be productive if put in the right system and surrounded by the right talent. Relies on his head more than his arms to make the good play. Early 5th round.
That all sounds amazing.
Now, the funny thing is when I talk about the didn't have a big league arm.
Yeah.
If you remember, that picture came out of Tom Brady with the combine, where he had like no muscle tone or anything like that. So he developed that later in his career. I was just
going to say, like, if we could have buffed up his photo via AI to match your analysis, then
there you go.
You might have been looking at a second rounder. Yeah. Now, I'm also curious. That sounds like an evaluation that should have put him ahead of Giovanni Carmazzi.
Right. Well, the thing about it is was Carmazzi 2000?
Yeah, he's one of the Brady Six.
Yeah, that's right. Giovanni Carmazzi was at the Senior Bowl that year. That was the first year it was the Senior Bowl. Tom Brady was not at the Senior Bowl. And as we've seen, Phillip Rivers, Donovan McNabb, Mac Jones, the Senior Bowl is a kingmaker, especially at the quarterback position.
Absolutely. Which
we talked about, and I'm ignorant to it right now. I apologize. It'd be interesting. We talked about this last podcast. It'd be interesting to see if Ty Simpson shows up at the Senior Bowl, if he gets the invite, and if he shows up.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, watch for that news. Watch for all the latest draft-related news from our guy, Tony Pauline, at EssentiallySports.com.